As the Covenant began running through human colonies left, right, and center, humans with their meat suits to survive on Earth couldn't physically stop the unknown strength of the alien enemy that began ruthlessly attacking. Even in instances where Sangheili warriors would give Marines time to get ready for battle, like in the one instance where a group of Marines were not immediately put down and instead were allowed to pick up their armaments, the elites would still run through the humans with little to no effort. Hand-to-hand combat between a human and Sangheili was a fight likened that to David and Goliath, except almost every time David lost. The elites were much taller than your shorter apes, i.e. us, and would possess more muscle mass and had almost every advantage. The one advantage that they didn't have, however, was the human spirit. As we have fought, survived, and ultimately thrived on Earth, there are very few challenges our species has risen to overcome. The alien onslaught that the humans of the future would face was no different. Scientists would begin working out how exactly humans could be altered to take on these elites in open fighting and even outright overcome their strengths with our own superhumans. Eventually, the Orion Project was born out of necessity and survival of the Homo sapiens race. While not entirely successful in its first iteration, the project would eventually go on as technology was gleaned from the Covenant or learned on our own. This would allow us to create super soldiers who were exceedingly expensive to make, but also exceedingly important to the effort of stopping our own extinction, but would eventually go on to stop the extinction of the entire galaxy. The Spartans, who were created through the series of invasive surgeries, schooling, and battle armor coming together to form a near-perfect soldier, were acquired through questionable means at first, but as time continued, would be acquired by volunteering adults. Internally, these soldiers would resemble their original human form, but many alterations would take place to make them more powerful and able to wear MJOLNIR in battle and come out firstly alive, but secondly covered in the lifeblood of the aliens that they fight. In this series, I will go into depth from a biological perspective of the different changes to the human form to create the towering Spartan that earned the respect of the Covenant, even if the name Demon was meant to be slightly insulting. In this episode, I will cover specifically the skeletal system and its changes, but also discuss how the body might compensate for these changes and what would happen if the body went into decompensated shock due to the inability to adapt properly to these surgical changes. So, everyone ready? Alright, let's get to it. There is a common misconception that the human skeleton is simply just a support structure. It exists only to give us shape and protect vital organs from damages from falls, other humans, or animals. In a way, this is true, but there is much more to the skeletal system than simply just a barrier from concussive forces. Without our skeleton, we wouldn't be able to balance calcium in our blood, we wouldn't be able to fight diseases, red blood cells wouldn't be able to move oxygen around the body, and we wouldn't be able to stop ourselves from devolving into a cancerous pile of goop on the ground. Our skeletons are very much alive and extremely vital to everything that makes us what we are. First thing we must cover is the importance of red bone marrow. I'm about to blow your mind. Red bone marrow exists within our bones. As we age, our bones change concerning location of red bone marrow, but primarily red bone marrow is found in the skull, bones of the rib cage, femur, humerus, and hips predominantly. As a human ages, these areas of red bone marrow will slowly convert over into yellow marrow, but we will cover that momentarily. Red bone marrow is primarily responsible for the production of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Red blood cells being critical for the fact that they possess hemoglobin, which is how we exchange carbon dioxide and pick up oxygen to perfuse through the body, keeping our tissues alive. So yeah, pretty important. The bones and these areas, specifically the femur and hip, possess roughly about 3 to 4 liters of blood volume at most times. Should you break one of these and begin bleeding, this will quickly result in hypovolemic shock, leading to your end, so just a bit of advice, don't break those. Red marrow is where our immune system stems from. White blood cells, T cells, B cells, you name it, if it fights disease, it stems from our bones. Should the marrow be damaged and succumb, this can severely weaken the human immune system and allow for bacteria, viruses, and fungi to spread into the human body and flourish, eventually leading to a sustained illness or eventual game end for the person. Yellow marrow slowly begins to replace the red marrow in a lot of places, but not entirely, however. As a person ages, the middle of the red marrow is slowly replaced until mostly in long bones it is replaced to about 80% by yellow marrow. This fatty tissue permeates the bone throughout as we get older. The marrows of a person are obviously important, but there are also sustaining factors for a body to undergo based upon calcium levels. The bones, which I just realized is a super appropriate topic considering we were getting closer to Halloween, so spooky scary skeletons, regulate levels of calcium within our body, and you guessed it, this is critical for your functioning. With hypocalcemia, hypo meaning low and calcemia meaning calcium in the blood, this can lead to a whole host of issues for a person. With relatively low levels present, this can cause muscle twitching and irritability. Should it not be addressed and the situation devolves into extreme hypocalcemia, this can lead to outright confusion, disorientation, and should it be low enough, lead to atrial and ventricular fibrillation, which results in cardiac cardiac arrest. The antithesis of this is hypercalcemia. Hyper meaning too much or elevated, and you already know what calcemia means. When the levels in the blood rise above average, this can lead to a person to be excessively tired, and should they continue to rise, this can actually lead to bone fragility, extreme fatigue, and eventual coma and game-in. Levels being maintained within the body is crucial to your survivability, and the bones actually act as a buffer reservoir in the body. Calcium can be used and stored at different times based upon your body's need at that particular point in time. So, how does it do this? Your body has a team of cells that are directed by hormones to do just this. Chemoreceptors scan the blood looking for dips in normal levels of minerals in the body. When this is spotted, specifically concerning calcium levels, your body will either direct osteoclasts or osteoblasts, depending on what the chemoreceptors have picked up. What's the difference? Well, osteoclasts are released during times of hypocalcemia. When released, they will spread over the bone and begin breaking down this bone for its calcium. This freed up calcium will move into the blood where it will be utilized. This can stop the body from going into cardiac arrest at its endpoint, and lo and behold, you can keep on keeping on. Nice job, osteoclasts. Osteoblasts do the opposite. They are responsible for bone building. If too much calcium is in the blood, say after doing the gallon challenge with milk or taking too many multivitamins, the chemoreceptors will stimulate the release of hormones to build. These osteoblasts will move into the bone, pulling calcium from the blood and storing it for further use in the future when there may be a deficit at play. Another thing to also realize about our bones is that the interior of the bones, apart from being marrow, are just as alive as your intestines, brains, skin, muscle, everything you have. A constant supply of blood is necessary to keep the bone alive, which, as mentioned earlier, 3 to 4 liters of blood is just in your femurs and hips alone. This indicates that your bones are riddled with blood vessels, making them an important part of your body to not break. So the key to all this is that the bones are important, and this plays into why the surgery to become a Spartan is so exceedingly dangerous, but also why it works and could be feasibly done with technology not currently available to our species right now. So let's get to why we are here, that our base biology lesson is over, but just be aware that there is a much more complex amalgamation of interactions that happens with our bones and our body, but this will give you a generalized idea of the process, and to understand it's not just chunks of inorganic minerals that exist within us. The Spartans, specifically Spartan 2 and Spartan 3s, because Spartan 4s seemingly have a less invasive surgery as technology was perfected, had their bones altered in a way that if we were to try this currently, it would result in the immediate game-in from shock to the body, regardless of how careful a surgeon was. At the end of their alterations, the skeleton is the last to be changed due to issues that could arise from pain, but also from physiological changes. With Spartan 2s, children were abducted and they were essentially flash grown by overhauling the pituitary gland and beginning puberty immediately. The bones grow as human growth hormone was dumped into their bloodstreams, and the growth plates of the bone began to divide at almost cancerous levels, and this results in much larger humans than what would be considered a normal growth curve. With these bones grown quickly, supplements would needed to have been administered to make sure that they just didn't completely snap from fragility due to the lack of calcium that would have been able to be applied by osteoblasts so quickly. With the 14-year-olds now over 6 feet tall, there are physical limits to human growth. With our skeletons now, more so with long bones, the longer they are, the easier they could break. So, the longer the lever, the stronger it needs to be. Same idea with bones. If the bones have grown too much also, this can cause issues with the joints of the body, such as the knees, ankles, hips, shoulders, elbows, seeing as they must not only carry the weight, but link up correctly. This won't be an issue for long, however, because the surgery to fix the issue of human bone limitations is corrected. How is this corrected? A great question. Nicely done. It is referred to as a carbide ceramic ossification surgery. This is essentially the grafting of super strong ceramic material onto the bones of a person. This has several effects on the Spartan. Some would be amazing if they were successful, and some are completely debilitating should the surgery have flaws and their body ultimately reject the carbide ceramic. Let's discuss the actual surgery and see how the bones are altered before talking about the actual effects it has on the old meat suit. During the surgery, a person will be rendered unconscious, which, is completely necessary. The literal skeleton of this person is exposed to open air. This is what you would kind of reference as an extremely invasive surgery, which you could probably guess. With the skeleton of this person exposed, the possibility of bleeding to game-in would be a fairly reasonable risk to assume, so it must be mitigated wherever it can. Many blood transfusions would be necessary for this procedure. With the skeleton open, the outer layer of bone is shaved down. It is stated that no more than 3% of the bone weight can be lost. We will go into why this is momentarily, but with the bone shaved down, this would inspire osteoblasts to be released post-surgery to repair the lost bone, but before this happens, carbide ceramic coating is applied to this bone. This is where the surgery is either successful or results in a dismal failure which can outright end a Spartan entirely. The body during post-surgery surgery endures extreme stress upon the systems. For some, it may be too much for the body to actually withstand, and this can result in shock and cardiac as well as respiratory arrest. The feeling has been likened to the bones being made out of glass and then shattering inside of the body. Remember, nerve cells and pain receptors are still quite prevalent throughout osseous tissue. After waking up from the surgery, the bones would immediately begin trying to repair themselves, so hormones would be released to have osteoblasts go to the area and repair the lost bone as if there was a break. This detection is crucial to the bonding of the carbide ceramic coating. With the body repairing the bone, this would butt up right against this coating. A fusion would more than likely be taking place between the outer surface of the bone and the coating. It can be assumed that a material would be used to help the bone matrix bond to the coating, and cells would be added on top of this matrix to make the connection seamless. With the success of the surgery, the bones would become insanely strong. After the surgery, the area of bone internally would continue to operate under a fairly normal condition, making new blood, new immune system cells, keeping the body alive. The outer bone, while shaved down, now will have this coating and has become virtually unbreakable. Falls and blunt force trauma will no longer snap the bone. This would imply that unlike normal bone, which can deal with thousands of pounds of pressure before snapping, the new bone can presumably deal with hundreds of thousands of pounds. Spartans have had their shoulders crushed by Bruce before, however, so there still is a limit. This strength would allow them to fall about 2 kilometers up and sometimes from space, concerning Noble 6 if they are lucky enough. They could also survive hits from elite warriors, operate MJOLNIR without damaging their body, and generally just do everything that we can't. Which, fun fact, before realizing that this is a surgery that was needed, they did test a regular human inside of a MJOLNIR suit, and the motion was so fast that it broke his shoulder and nearly suffocated him in that suit. As such, it's completely necessary to replace your normal, weak human bones. So let's get to what happens should the surgery fail. A Spartan will likely not survive. Those that do have become paralyzed or debilitated. The reason is the bone may undergo white blood cell necrosis, and this is typically caused by more than 3% of the bone being replaced. This can lead to marrow, game ending, as well as surrounding tissue. This necrosis could lead to septic shock in the Spartan. The bone could also reach its end, and should this be in the vertebral column, which protects the spinal cord, this could leach out into the area, leading to an infection there, as well as damaging the spinal cord, and in turn leading to paralysis. Some have actually survived the rejection, but it was a long process to get them to this point. There are references that it is known that this surgery cannot be used on children. As the bone attempted to grow with a carbide coating, the bone would not breach the shell nor move it. When this happened, it would lead to extreme pain and complete pulverization of this bone, which, as you could probably guess, has its own set of issues. Adults who did not stop growing as well, due to surgeries that will be discussed in later episodes, they would continue growing, and this would lead to this bone pulverization. So with the bone strengthened to superhuman level, this would allow a person to deal with also the muscle alterations and attachment points. Should the muscle be altered in the Spartan and the bone's not strengthened, this would tear apart any connection point to the skeleton, but with the carbide ceramic ossification, the skeleton can now deal with the new pressures of the body and the physical forces imposed on it by the MJOLNIR armor. A Spartan without armor will still be much heavier because of these alterations, so it can be assumed that the skeleton is heavier as well. But due to this, they can deal with hand-to-hand combat with the Covenant. They can survive direct hits from elites, be able to run faster and jump further, but also can deal with falls that would basically turn a normal human skeleton into dust. These bones still exist in their standard living form underneath the coating, but will forever retain their shape and build long after the Spartan passes from natural or more than likely unnatural causes. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope everyone enjoyed the first episode in this series I'm starting. Also, I want to let you know that my second channel, formerly Roanoke Streaming, but now named Croatoan Medical, which I will discuss biology, astronomy, physics, basically anything science, is in existence if you want to go look at that. So if that sounds interesting to you, I will leave a link in the description and pinned comment. I've also dropped my Twitter, Discord, merch, and Patreon links in the description if anybody's interested in that, and I'd like to thank a few of my patrons. Huge shout out to It's Not a Spoon and Laffy No Skill. Thank you, my guys, and I also want to thank Freedom Units 44, The Lone Titan, and Skilt. And to my rest of my patrons, I thank you as well. You guys are awesome. Anyhow, so that's gonna do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed. Go check out that second channel. First episode should be out soon, discussing CRISPR and kind of what it does, and I will see y'all in the next one.